Hello, coffee lovers. My name is Russell Volts from Lake City Coffee. Today we're going to talk about how to make smooth coffee. And what do I mean by smooth? Basically, not bitter. I want coffee I can sit on the couch, kick my feet up, have one sip and go, ah. Take another sip and go, ah. That is damn good coffee. That's what I'm looking for. I want coffee that's as smooth as silk. And the question is it all in the making? What parts of all this coffee paraphernalia really count? What do you have to do as a coffee drinker to make coffee that's worth dying for? Just great, smooth, flavorful coffee. And it's pretty easy, actually. It's just a matter of experimenting and finding out what works and what doesn't. I'm going to explain to you today what I like, what I do, and some possibilities. First of all, you need to start out with great beans. And that means fresh beans. Fresh beans to me and just about any other coffee aficionado means having beans that was roasted less than 30 days ago. That's at a very minimum. Right? That's why on our coffee, you're going to see a roast date. That roast date is everything. Yet good luck finding coffee with a roast date on it. Ours always gets roasted and shipped the same day. That's how fresh it is. So fresh coffee is a big deal. I can take probably bad beans and a bad roast, but it's fresh and make pretty darn good coffee. Maybe not great coffee, but pretty good. You add to that beans that are second to none, like Lake City Coffee's beans. All of our beans, 100% of them, come from the Tarrazú region of Costa Rica. Why that area? Well, after going on 2 decades of coffee roasting and really getting into coffee, I found that area, Central America, has the smoothest coffee. In Central America, it's Costa Rica. Within Costa Rica, it's the Tarrazú region, and I work with specific co-ops and plantation owners there that make super, super smooth coffee that have very prominent notes. Sometimes those notes are chocolate, sometimes they're citrus, sometimes they're earthy or barky. There's a variety of different flavors that can come from that. So we start with really good, high quality beans. It's like everything else in life. It's you get what you pay for, right? If you want cheap, crappy coffee, then go buy Folgers, go buy Starbucks, etc. So starting out with great beans, that's number one. Two, that those beans aren't over roasted. A vast majority of the coffee roasters in America buy very cheap, very low quality beans, and then they burn the snot out of them so you can't tell the difference that they're crappy beans. So don't get them over roasted. If they're black and burnt, they're no good. Our dark roast, now this is a medium roast, granted, okay, but our dark roast is roasted to a very dark brown. It's almost black, but not quite. And we roast low and slow, as opposed to hot and fast, like everybody else. Low and slow preserves the oils inside the bean. And it's those oils that give you your bioflavonoids, your antioxidants, your caffeine, and most of all, your flavor. Without the oils, you don't have any flavor. So burnt coffee really tastes like the roaster. Doesn't taste like the coffee beans. So again, great beans, super fresh. These are actually still warm when I put them in the box to go to USPS. And even when I take them out of the car and put them into the bin at the post office, the box is still warm. That's fresh. So from our roaster to your table in 24 to 72 hours, that's going to help. Do you have to buy our beans? No. But if you can find a local roaster that doesn't over roast and they're starting with good quality beans, first of all, I've never found that, but you might. Who knows? Secondly is in the grinding. There's 2 kinds of grinders out there. This is what they call a burr grinder. It's the exact same technology that the Romans used to grind salt, grind pepper. It's just basically a cone inside a cone with a little bit of space, and one cone spins and it grinds the coffee. What it does for you is gives you a consistent grind. So if you're looking for a medium grind, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, you're looking for a 5, 99% of the grounds in the bottom are going to be a 5. That's what you were looking for, right? The other kind of grinder is a blade grinder. They're cheaper. It's just, it's kind of like a blender or a food processor, just a blade twirling around. What you end up with is maybe 75% of what you're grinding is what you want, but you got 25% that's too coarse or too fine. So you get a mixture, therefore you're not getting something consistent that you can work with. So I also say, even with a burr grinder, which is the way to go, burr grinders run $60 on up. I think this one cost me, I don't know, 80 bucks, something like that. Now granted, it's a hand grinder. You won't find, and this is made in Missouri, so made in the USA, which is great. 100% of this baby is made in the USA. You take a look at an electric grinder, they're almost all from China. I haven't found any electric grinders outside of China. I'd even buy one if it was from Italy or from France or the Netherlands or wherever. I don't care, as long as it's not China. So burr grinders is the way to go. Your choice whether you want to buy an electric grinder made by slave labor in China or a manual grinder that's made in the USA. And there's a couple of them in the USA, not many. This one's from Red Rooster Trading Company out of Missouri. Great, great, great product. So now the next question is, do I go fine or do I go coarse? That's all about your personal preference. Here's a general rule of thumb. Rule of thumb is the finer the grind, the more flavor you're going to get, but also it's going to be more bitter. On the other hand, a coarse grind is going to be smoother, less bitter, but also less taste. So you got to find what works for you. And that experimentation, I don't know, you may have to make coffee a dozen times and change up the grind. This little baby here, if I change it by 1 notch, the taste difference is big enough to notice. Let's put it that way. The next variable is how much grounds are you going to use. So I personally use 20 grams for a 16-ounce mug of coffee. 20 grams is roughly a 1/4 cup. That's what that is right there. I go ahead and I actually do measure out 20 grams, and I'm finding almost all people that are really into coffee. Now, by really into coffee doesn't mean that you like bad coffee. It means that you're willing to take the time and the effort to make really good coffee. I have a son-in-law this morning, and he taught me a new trick I'm going to talk about in a second. So we talked about that. Let's talk about the different brewing methods. I didn't grab one, but you can have a mason jar and make cold brew. I've got a whole video on that. You can read that. That's probably the smoothest coffee you're going to find. Cold brew is just so smooth. The flavor isn't overwhelming, but it's so smooth. You can take probably pretty crappy coffee beans from a crappy roaster and it'll taste halfway decent with cold brew. Now the next is the AeroPress. This is one of my favorites. So AeroPress, you take one of these paper filters, throw it in the bottom here, stick it in the bottom of the AeroPress. You put your ground coffee in, set it on top of a coffee mug, fill it up with water. A great tool most coffee people should have is a gooseneck kettle. Finding these not made in China is tough. This one was actually made in Japan, and it's copper, looks good, goes on the stove. You can either get a stovetop or an electric. All the electric ones are out of China, made by slave labor. Nonetheless, throw this on top of the mug, put in your plunger, press it down, and you have coffee. This AeroPress, made in the USA, unfortunately San Francisco, but that's still, last I heard, was part of the USA. AeroPress is the next smoothest coffee that you're going to get, the least bitter. After that is pour over. Now Melitta, which many of you have seen their paper filters, also make slow pour over cones. Okay, and these cones are made in the USA, 100% made in the USA. You can put a paper filter in it, stick it over a mug, put your grounds in the paper filter, and then wet it with a gooseneck kettle. So that's the third most, how should I say it? It's just super smooth. It's a nice, smooth, non-bitter coffee. Chemex is the same thing, except Chemex, which kind of ticks me off, they claim to be made in the USA. The little wooden collar around it and the leather strap, that's made in the USA, but all the glass comes from China, slave labor. So anyway, that's the next option. We have a French press, which is my go-to because there's a nice balance between what's really smooth and also gives you a ton of flavor. And that's why I like a French press. You simply throw your grounds in, your water, stir it up, let it sit for, I let it sit for 3 minutes, press it down, pour it into a cup of coffee. This is probably, in my opinion, the purest way of making coffee in the sense that it doesn't hide anything. It doesn't emphasize anything. It's just plain, that's how the coffee tastes. French press is great. Percolator, should have grabbed one of those too. The old percolators, they have a reputation for being some of the worst coffee that you can make. It's not the percolator's fault. Your grandmother and great-grandmother used a percolator and they percolated it for 20 minutes. No wonder it tasted bad. But if you let it, as soon as it starts percolating in that little knob on top of the percolator, let it go 3 minutes, you're done. And after that, it's actually pretty darn good coffee. I would say pretty close to this French press. So don't discount a percolator. They're dirt cheap and they're great for taking camping. Drip machines are probably my most disliked method of brewing coffee. Mostly because it has a single spout coming down. You have a bin full of grounds there and the water's going right in the middle, keeps dripping on down, and it barely gets everything wet. It makes coffee that's barely drinkable, in my personal opinion. You love a drip coffee machine? Go for it. I always say, drink what you like. So this is a Cuisinart. At the time, was one of the very best that you could buy. Now I found since then Mocha Master. Now you can find on my website. I have an article on Mocha Master. There's also in our brewing equipment page. There's a page there and it talks about the Mocha Master. It has, instead of having one drip hole, has 10 drip holes. So it's not really a drip machine. It's more like a slow pour over, very much like this, where that you're using. Because it has 10 drip holes. It even pre-wets the filter and pre-wets the grounds, and then it waits a moment, and then it starts doing its thing. Great machine. And that, people call it a drip machine. It's really more an automated pour over. Espresso. I don't have an espresso machine. I'm not an espresso guy, but I have a number of friends that do, and they buy my coffee, and therefore I go to their house and I ask them for espresso, and I'm putting espresso in the mocha pot in a different genre. So it's not more bitter. Typically it is, but with our beans, because the beans are so smooth, I've had espresso, straight espresso. This is no foo-foo, latte. I'm talking about straight espresso that was smooth, flavorful, strong, and wonderful. So espresso machines work. Mocha pot. Now, I have bad-mouthed these things my entire life, and this very morning, my son-in-law said, "Hey, can I make you coffee?" And he brags about his mocha pot. I said, "Yeah, make me a mocha pot." He says, "I thought you ate that." I said, "I do, but you know how to make it. Maybe I'm just making it wrong." So he made me one. It was pretty darn good. It wasn't the best I've ever had, but it wasn't near as bad as what I make. So that being said, the mocha pot works, and that's pretty much it. What I want to say more than anything else is make sure that you have fresh beans. And one of the ways we keep our beans fresh is we triple seal the envelope so it's an airtight container. And then we add one of these to every bag. This, my friends, is the key to fresh coffee. This is an oxygen absorber. Every prepper will tell you that oxygen is the enemy of freshness. So we put one of those in the bottom of every bag, and we triple seal it. You can't tell the difference between day-old roasted coffee and month-old roasted coffee in this bag. I bet 99% of you can't tell the difference between 3-month-old. And you stick it in the freezer, 3 years old, it's still going to be 90% as good as the day it was roasted. That all being said, do you have any questions? Let us know. I imagine you're like me. You want smooth coffee. This is the way to do it. Look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day.